And a very good evening, everybody, and welcome to the fourth and final round of the 2024 qualifying series for the Logitech G Pro Invitational A Series. Coming to you tonight from Fuji Speedway in Japan. Not a circuit that we normally race supercars on, but that all changes this evening. And this is the last chance for those drivers sitting outside the top 20 in the standings to buy themselves a ticket to the main series. Jared Filsell, well, he's already in because he's got an unassailable lead at the top of the standings, having won all of the 3 rounds thus far. But behind him, it's going to be pretty hotly contested. Joining me in commentary tonight, it's a very good evening, first and foremost, to Steve Sandman Clark. How are you going, Stephen?
I'm well, Lockie. How are you, mate? I'm excited about this one. I haven't seen any racing in the supercars here at Fuji, so I'm really looking forward to this.
And also joining us in commentary tonight, we'll have, well, I think for the time being, we can safely say that it'll be his last appearance in commentary before he returns to the driver's seat. But great to have him in the commentary box for some expert comments. Jake Burhan, good evening.
Yeah, good evening, guys. Keen to flatten those wings off tonight with that big long straight down down towards turn 1 here at Fuji. And as Sandman said, totally new track for many of the guys and girls who are racing tonight, I'm sure.
So let's have a look at the Fuji Speedway layout, and I think probably the most distinctive feature of this circuit is the super long main straight, one of the highest speeds that we'll see the supercars get up to anywhere, because it's also such a fast corner leading onto that straight. So we head to Japan, and it's a circuit that in the past has actually held some pretty high profile events, including the Grand Prix. In fact, turn number 16, Panasonic corner, it has changed since the original configuration of the circuit, where you had that long sweeping right handle leading onto the main straight. So that'll be a critical corner to get a good exit, to make sure that you get a good run down the straight. Slipstreaming down that long main straight is also going to be one of the key factors tonight, that's for sure.
It's massive, isn't it? It's a very picturesque racetrack too. We talk about Mount Fuji in the background, and it's really a great layout. I've enjoyed watching so much real-world racing around here, and really excited to see Supercars battle it out for the Logitech Pro Series.
So, not too long until we get underway for qualifying. It'll be a 20-minute qualifying session, and then the race itself will be 45 laps, so a bit over 200 kilometres and a couple of compulsory pit stops. That's been the format that's been in use pretty much right the way through this qualifying series, and it's a similar format to what we see in use in the main series as well. Let's have a look at the points coming into the weekend. Jared Filsell with a perfect score, winning all 3 rounds so far, 200 points apiece. That gives him a perfect tally of 600 points. Forza El Nabi sitting second, ahead of Jordan Ross, the consistent. Bo Albert in position 4. And then it's Jacob O'Reilly, Sean McNamara, Jake Maloney, Matthew Bolo, Maxateo Sorono, and Kurt Stenberg rounding out your top 10. But it's the positions a bit further down where there's going to be the main interest, because remember, you have to get into the top 20 to earn yourself a spot in the series. And you can see there that the points spread between positions 16 down to 20 is pretty tight. You've only got 14 points from 16th down to 20th. And then outside the top 20, there's some more drivers who are knocking on that door to try and get themselves in. The likes of Andre Yusuf, Michael Taliancic, a big name who we probably would have expected to be somewhere inside. Brian Borg, that's another driver who we probably would have expected to see inside the top 20 as well. And tonight, it's their last chance to get a good result on the board and work their way into that top 20.
It'd be definitely some nervous Nellies there, wouldn't there? Like, you think about the chance that they've had. It's round number 4, the final race of the season for this little qualifying series, and they all know that top 20 is the goal, because after tonight, if you're not in that, it's basically you're sitting out and you become a passenger and sit and watch the rest of it. So I guess Taliancic, it takes the pressure off him a little bit. He managed to score a golden ticket before the opening round, or before this round, sorry. So the pressure's off him, but everyone else will be definitely starting to sweat bullets, and it'll be interesting to see the live points as we go on throughout the race and see how that changes as we get towards the end of the run.
It's been one of the great features of the broadcast so far this year, is the fact that Jay Kennedy and the SimSpeed TV team have been able to give us live points, so we can give you very up-to-date and accurate information about who sits where in terms of the pecking order as the race plays out. So that's something that will be updating for you as the night progresses. Let's get a bit of a driver's perspective, Jake, because we talked before about the fact that this is not a circuit where you typically see a lot of supercars racing. How are you seeing things playing out tonight?
Well, I think this track has a bit of everything. So the difficulty you've got is you've got this long straight that we're seeing Teo Sorono driving down now, where the cars are going to get excess of 280 k's an hour. They've probably flattened the wings off a bit. I'm not going to say fully low downforce like what you'd see at a track like Sandown or Bathurst, because you need a lot of sort of, you know, curved traction. There's a lot of corners, especially, we might actually stick with Tao here as we go. As you come through turn 2, this is obviously a very high downforce corner. It's sort of 4th gear, very, very quick. Might drop down to 3rd, but yeah, still fast corner, 160k, and then you need the rear downforce to keep the rear settled as you go all the way around this right-hander, and then we've got another curved acceleration zone out of the next left. So there's a lot of challenges on this track that really demand rear downforce. So it's a bit of a balancing act. How much do you want to take off for that main straight, which is going to make your car a lot easier to attack and defend with over the race, while still having drivability over the rest of the track. And another interesting addition as well is this turn 10 complex here. We're not utilising the chicane, but there's this really tricky right-hander with the bump there that you see on the apex, which is really tricky to get through. So even though there's no chicane, which I bet the guys are really thankful for, it is still quite challenging. And then, of course, you got the last couple sectors of this lap where it's just more of the same, really long corners with just slow lateral loads where you're trying to get to the throttle, and just it's a matter of patience, but also you need to get to it as quickly as possible, especially headed down this main straight.
Through those tight and technical sections, you can say that it's paramount to have the car really accurately positioned, because each corner, it's critical to make sure that you've got the car in the right position to lead into the next corner. And like you say, there are some sections there where it's quite high speed, a lot of load going through the left-hand side of the car in particular, with some of those sweeping right-handers around the back of the circuit, and you do have to hold it in quite tight through there as well. If you don't have enough downforce, you'll probably find the car washing a bit wide, so being able to maintain that mid-corner speed while keeping the car on the line, that's going to be one of the challenges. And then when we get to the main straight, it's going to be all about drafting, slipstreaming, taking advantage of the hold that gets punched in the air by the car ahead, and trying to set yourself up for an overtaking opportunity down into turn number 1. The other thing as well, Sandman, that was evident from that on-board shot that we looked at before, is that there's a fair bit of elevation change around this circuit as well.
Yeah, I noticed that especially coming onto the front straight. You know, you see that it's like they're almost climbing up a little bit and then, you know, getting the car prepped. But that's what I think is really special about this, is you can just see from that shot, it's just the undulation. And that really gives the drivers something to work with and get their car set up, and the way they get their car balanced and try to get on the power. And sometimes having just that little bit of undulation, little bit of bank in that corner, you know, sometimes that can really help a driver. So nice to see. It's got, you know, I think I say it every week, it's got a little bit of everything, but this track definitely has, and really unique with that long front straightaway.
With the race distance tonight, Jake, do we expect fuel saving to be a factor? And also, what's the circuit like in terms of tyre load and tyre degradation?
Well, to be honest, Lockie, like a lot of the guys who are racing tonight, I've never raced here. So to be honest, I've got no experience to draw from on that matter. I can imagine though that obviously as you pull wing off the car, which I imagine a lot of the teams are doing, you do lose a lot of drive, and that will hurt the rear. You're going to have the rear moving around a little bit more. So I'm imagining, especially, you know, looking at it, it's not a super hot track temp, but it's warm enough that, you know, you'll be burning rear tyres tonight, especially in those traction zones. So I think preserving that over the race will be super key. You're also right, turn 1, there's a huge amount of fuel saving that could be done down there in the toe. There's an enormous amount. I don't know how big a sort of it is in terms of how critical it is for strategy. Like, it's not going to make the difference between, you know, 2 stops or 3 or anything like that. It's an easy 2-stop race with the CPSs, but I think you can definitely save yourself a couple of seconds compared to your rivals in the pits.
So just coming towards the end of this practice session, about 90 seconds remaining. We'll have all of the angles covered for you on SimSpeed TV, as always. There's Jordan Ross on screen at the moment. So just having a look at the point situation. So Jared Filsell, as mentioned, he is safe, 600 points. He's more than 200 points ahead of the 20th place driver. That would mean that even if he was to score a 0 tonight, his place in the main series is secure. But there's actually up to 36 drivers. So outside the top 20, there's another 16 drivers that are all within 200 points of that 20th position. So there's still, mathematically at least, 36 drivers vying for 20 spots for qualification for the main series.
How good is that? When it comes down to that point, you know, especially the last race of this series, to have that many people still mathematically in contention, that's terrific. Says a lot for the field and the racing that we've had. Obviously, Jared's been in a bit of a league of his own, hasn't he? Claiming all 3 wins so far, and he's been top of the timesheets in practice, and you probably expect much the same tonight. He was our inaugural series champion, and for him to be in this Q series now, he's got his seat ready for this year. It'll be interesting to see how he attacks 2024.
The new sponsor on board for Jared Filsell as well, renowned motorsport news website speedcafe.com, coming on board to support his campaign. Now, while we've got a bit of a break and while we wait for the cars to come out for qualifying, let's take a look at the 2024 calendar for the Logitech G Pro Invitational E-Series, and it kicks off on the 13th of March at Sebring in the US for a sprint round. Round number 2 will be held at Phillip Island on the 10th of April. Then we go to the Red Bull Ring on the 1st of May. Should probably note that, a bit like last year, Wednesday night will be the the night where all of the sprint rounds will be held, and then we'll have Friday nights, and in the case of Bathurst, Sunday for the Enduros. But running through the rest of the calendar, Jerez in Spain will host round number 4 on the 22nd of May. Watkins Glen back to the US for round number 5 on the 12th of June. Road America will host round number 6 on the 3rd of July. Then we head to Italy, the high-speed Monza circuit for round 7 on the 24th of July. Interlagos in Brazil will host the first of 3 endurance races that we'll have this year. So one more enduro than we had last year. So that'll be the Interlagos 500 on the 9th of August. The Sandown 500 takes place on the 30th of August, and then the big one, the Bathurst 1000, will be held on the 15th of September. Round number 11 at this stage is still a TBA, but that will be a sprint round to be held on the 23rd of October. And then the 12th and final round, the decider, will be held at the coveted Spa-Francorchamps circuit in Belgium on the 13th of November to round out our 2024 season.
How's that,
Jake,
the wet your lips, does it?
I was just going to ask, Jake, are there any particular rounds there that you're especially looking forward to?
Well, I'm a big fan of the first half of the season. Obviously, Sebring, for me, brings back some bad but good memories of the first inaugural season we had there. Phillip Island is always a classic. Excited for that one. And then you got sort of Watkins Glen and Road America in the back half of the first half of the season. Both tracks that are really good for racing. But that TBA round excites me quite a bit. I'm hoping it'll be Pukekohe, but we'll see what happens.
So Pukekohe, I'm guessing that track was laser scanned and is going to be eternally preserved in iRacing, a bit like the old Oran Park circuit was. So,
they announced that they were going to try and do a deal. I'm not sure if the scan's been done yet, but we do know it's coming. We're just not sure how long it's going to be.
Well, fingers crossed that turns out to be the case, because that would be absolutely fantastic to have a round at Pukekohe. And to have it as the penultimate round, that would actually give it vibes of the real life Supercars Championship from the early 2000s, when Pukekohe often played host to the penultimate round. But anyway, let's turn our attention back to the on-track action, because we are into qualifying. We're watching Joshua Thomas on screen at the moment, and also Craig Schultz. And all of the drivers, they will be tactically trying to slot themselves into a position on the track where they can take advantage from contact between those two competitors. I was just going to say, try and get a slipstream from the car in front, but you don't want to get so close to other cars that you're in danger of having contact with them, which will ruin your lap altogether.
Yeah, they spent quite a few corners almost tripping over each other, just slowing each other up. Like one corner, someone would go in a little bit hot, run a little bit wide, and unfortunately, I think it was just that little bit of crossover that didn't quite clear each other, and unfortunately, a little bit of contact. So I think if that was me, I'd be just diving straight into the lane and just putting on a new set of tyres and go again.
So some lap time starting to come through. Job Stewart, 1 minute 34.6. Zach Rattray White, who's been one of the standouts of this qualifying series, he moves up there as well. Jared Filsell now up into position number 2. Want to say a big congratulations to Job Stewart, because he had his first round in the real life Dunlop Super 2 series last weekend at Mount Panorama Bathurst, stepping up after winning the Super 3 series last year. And a very impressive performance from young Job it was as well, finishing in second place behind the reigning champion Kai Allen in at the Sunday race. But Job does enjoy his sim racing as well, and he's one of the drivers that's right in that danger zone in terms of the championship. He's 19th in points, in fact, coming into tonight. I think he actually missed a round earlier on in the qualifying series, so he'll be one of those drivers under a bit of pressure to bank a strong result tonight to make sure that he qualifies for the main series.
A few drivers just running a little bit hot, run a little bit wide. This is what we were talking about before, where they're tripping over each other, and just a little bit of contact caught that ripple strip on the inside. So straight away, that's an off track, and that lap is certainly done and dusted. Did a good job there of actually moving out of the way. He knew there were some fast cars coming and just took to the grass.
So this is Griffin Gardner that we're watching at the moment, currently top of the timesheets after the first flying lap. with 1 minute 34.5, 34.6 for Job Stewart. Jared Phil-Sell also on a 34.6, sitting in position 3. Matthew Bowler, Zach Ray White, Jacob O'Reilly, Luke Mitchinson, Damien Johnston, and then we go back to Ian Ford and Forza El Nabi, rounding out your top 10.
There's something I was talking about with Mr. Kennedy, Ian Lightby. Oh, big lock up there. The entrance into pit lane. Mr. Kennedy was showing me the line that takes you into pit lane on the front straight. You've got to actually be really careful about not tagging that line as you decide to dive into the pits, because it can get you a penalty. So you'll see here, there's that line. They need to keep that on driver's left. And it's really crucial that they stay away from it. It'd be so easy just to tag it. And, of course, you don't want to get too aggressive with the red lines there, because that could also end up in a penalty too.
And the reason for those blend lines, both at pit entry and pit exit, is because it is such a long and fast straight here at Fuji. We don't want slow-moving cars that are exiting pit lane merging hard left into, onto the racing line and creating a risk for the drivers that are at race speed. So that's the reason that those blend line rules are in place. So I think it'll be the fairly typical pattern of what we've seen, where the drivers will do an out lap, one flying lap, head back to the pits, put on some new tyres and go again. 20 minutes the duration for this session, so time for a few runs at it, but obviously if you do get an off track or your lap time gets otherwise invalidated, it can put a bit of pressure on later in the session. And Josh Thomas yet to actually record a lap time at the moment. Also Richard Hampstead, Craig Schultz, Michael Taliancic and Sean McNamara, those drivers all yet to actually record official lap times so far in this session.
How would you go about it, Jake? Like you said, you haven't raced here before. A lot of these drivers haven't probably raced here at all. So how would you go about this session? I know we talk about each week is about how important it is just to get a banker, but it would definitely be the case for a racetrack that you've never been to before.
Yeah, that's right. I think the hardest bit about this, as we're looking at Richard at the moment, I think, is judging this gap. How big do you want this gap to be? Because obviously the closer you can get down this main straight here, you're going to get a huge amount of gain at the start of your lap. I'm guessing it's probably a couple tenths at least. And then you get even more on the run down towards turn 2. But as we get in towards turn 3 with that long double apex right-hander, having that car in front of you just pulls all the aero off the front splitter and makes the car understeer a bunch. So working out where that balance is of how close do you want to be to get the gain but also not get the loss, I think is going to be the tricky bit. Looks like Richard's given about 7 or 8 tenths by the looks of it, so he won't get a huge amount of gain down the main straight, but he'll still get a fair bit, but he won't be impeded as much by being that far back. So a bit of a balancing act for these guys.
Main overtaking opportunities on this circuit, obviously turn 1 is a key overtaking opportunity. Also probably heading up towards turn number 6, if you can get a good run through that long right hand of 100R. It's 2 corners because it's sort of a double apex turns 4 and 5, but if you can get a good run through there, you can set yourself up for a dive down the inside in turn number 6. Also, turn number 10, the right hand unlock corner, another potential overtaking opportunity, but I think you would agree, Jake, turn 1 is probably the primary passing spot on this track.
Yeah, definitely. Just such a long braking zone with the straight that you can draft up into on the way in. I think there's no doubt about it. And the other good thing is you probably can run it a little deep into turn 1 because a crisscross is going to put you on the wrong side of the road as well. So ideally you'd want to park the bus, sort of not compromise your line into the next corner, pull them up in the mid. But obviously, if they do get a little bit of an overlap on you, you're pretty easily going to have them covered into 2 anyway.
That onboard shot with Richard there just shows you just that elevation change of just how much undulation was in that last part of the racetrack. Just trying to see what time he goes, P7, so that's not bad. We just touched on before that he hadn't put down a time, so to already put a banker straight in and puts him P7, I think he'd be pretty happy with that.
Forza El Nabi moves up into second. Bo Albert jumping up into position number 5 as well. So Jared Phil-Sell, who was provisionally on the front row earlier on has actually been dropped down into 6th position as a result of some other drivers improving. There he is on screen at the moment, the Speed Cafe car.
The beauty is for Jared that there's actually zero pressure coming in tonight. It's all about probably having a bit of fun, having some racing with these guys, and just seeing how tonight plays out. So even if he finds himself a little bit down the order at the start, he may even enjoy that a little bit, knowing that the pressure's off tonight and he can start thinking about making some moves on some drivers.
But I think one of the other things as well, I mean, obviously there is a bit of pressure in having to compete in the qualifying series because you're not guaranteed a spot in the main series, but if you can come out and dominate like Jared has, not only does it mean that there's no pressure, but it's also an opportunity to almost use it as a bit of a test session. You know, make sure that you've got the rapport going with your spotter or your other teammates who you might be talking to in a Discord chat, and maybe just experiment with some strategy options as well. So, yes, there is a bit of pressure in competing in this series, but it can have its benefits as well.
It's like it's his reward now, isn't it? But just showed how strong he had been in the first 3 rounds, you know, to get those wins and have that that points up his sleeve. And, you know, now, like you said, he may even think about trying some setup things, something with the car, especially going to a new racetrack. But I really like that we've gone to a track it's sort of a little bit of an unknown for everyone. It really levels the playing field, and no doubt there would have been quite a few teams and drivers that did plenty of laps around here in preparation for tonight, just so they weren't caught with their pants down.
You could hear that pit lane siren going in the background as well. So that's one of the effects that is part of the iRacing package here at Fuji, is the fact that you do have that siren or that alarm that sounds whenever you've got cars coming into the pits, just as it does in real life. Got some, as we've seen right throughout the A-Series, some beautifully presented cars. There's Kenneth Latter in the bright yellow Fishy Motorsports Mustang. The presentation, it's always been exceptional, but if possible, it does actually seem to get better and better every year. And with the job that some of the teams have done with their liveries, I mean, Trans-Tasman Racing's obviously an example. Those cars have run pretty much the same livery for many, many seasons now, and it gives them their own brand identity in whichever sim racing events they're competing in. There is Richard Hampstead. In fact, a couple of TTR cars running a line astern at the moment.
Yeah, always handy to have a teammate around that's close by, especially on a track that you know, is draft dependent. So Jake's in 4th. Hammers are back in 8th. So I think they're just trying to find themselves a little bit of real estate now. But isn't it funny how everyone just finds each other and they all bunch up? The last thing you want to do is just trip over each other. Jake touched on it before about how, you know, you want to be close enough to capitalise on the draft, but you just don't want to get close enough where they jeopardise you and you throw it away in the tight, twisty parts.
Question that I have for you without notice, Jake. I mean, you're obviously part of the Trans-Tasman teams. We've got one of the cars getting squeezed out off the edge of the track there. That was the 007 car of Ty Delaney. No damage done for him, but that will ruin that lap. The question I was going to ask Jake, though, how closely are the likes of Madison Down and Brady Myers, drivers who have already qualified for the main series by virtue of their championship result last year, how closely have they been following this qualifying series?
I think it depends on the driver. Like, I know Brady did a fair bit of work this week to help Richard and Maloney and Stenny. He definitely put a fair bit of work in. Mads has been pretty flat out. I know he's had a couple trips to Melbourne. One of them, of course, to actually attend the Motorsport Australia Awards and collect his championship trophy for winning the championship last year. But yeah, definitely. I think a lot of close eyes. We obviously want as many cars in the championship as possible, and I imagine every team's the same, even though it makes co-driver time a little bit tricky later in the year. The more representation you can have in the series, the better. So it's in all of our sort of best interest to get as many cars in there as possible. And yeah, Brady definitely put a huge effort in for these guys this week.
So I'm glad you mentioned the Motorsport Australia Awards dinner, because this series, it has become pretty much the the officially sanctioned Motorsport Australia recognised national championship when it comes to Australian sim racing. So that further validates the position of the Logitech G Pro Invitational E Series as the very pinnacle of Australian online sim racing, and it is recognised by our governing and sanctioning body here in Australia.
Lots of times coming through just then.
Yeah, well, Jared Filsell's gone to the top again, and 1 minute 34.3 for Jared Filsell. Looks like he might be on target to improve again because he's actually he's just completed the lap. So he did the fastest middle sector of all. His last sector was a bit slower, but overall, it was still good enough to be fastest. And Bo Albert, great job from Bo Albert, moving up into position number 2 on a 1:34.4. So Filsell now on top ahead of Albert, Bowler. Griffin Gardner, who was fastest earlier on, has been relegated back to 4th. Then it's El Nabi, Maloney, Mitchelson, Job Stewart back to 8th. Richard Hamstead in 9th position. And Zach Rattray White rounding out the top 10 at this point.
Didn't take much to throw a cat amongst the pigeons, did it? You know, all these drivers all having their almost last run. They're probably, they'd be stretching it to sort of get back to pit lane and have another crack now. So I guess what they want to do is just use what they've got. You can see Jared's trying to push on, but he's now got a little bit of traffic on him. So this lap, even though he proved the last time round, he's not going to improve this time, and he's probably too close now to probably make up any other advantage. They will probably try and dive to pit lane, but I don't know that there'll be enough time to get in there and get back out again. They'll be cutting it very fine.
Oh, Jared Filsell, in fact, a few drivers seriously committed there on the entry to pit lane. I thought that there might have been a collision there, but thankfully they all managed to avoid one another. It's a fine line, isn't it, Jake, between nailing the pit entry to make sure that you get in and out as fast as you can, but not accidentally coming in too hot and copping a pit lane speeding violation.
That's right, and I think the guys have actually got a fair bit in the bag still. There's 2.5 minutes still to go, so they should have no problems getting around. But something I've actually just noticed is that the temperature does appear to sort of be on its way down. It was 28 when I opened the session up anyway, and now it's 27. So you might find for sort of the first time this season that the track's actually getting a little bit quicker. That would at least be sort of reflected in what we saw just then, where everyone seemed to go a lot quicker on their second run. So we could, see some guys going faster on their third now too.
And the ambient temperature's 19 degrees, so pretty much perfect conditions for the optimum performance for these race cars. And yes, if the track temperature has come down a little bit, that could play to the advantage of these drivers. So it could be one of these qualifying sessions where it's whoever gets their lap in last is the one who has the advantage. Zach Rattray White with the track all to himself at the moment, but it's going to be a pretty mad dash for a lot of the field to get back around and cross the line in time for another crack at it. There's sort of a couple of different groups of cars on the track at the moment, so the first half of the track, they should be able to get around fairly comfortably to get another flying lap in, but then there's a few cars a bit further back that might be cutting it a bit fine, so it's going to be a pretty tense finish to this qualifying session. For the drivers who are competing in the main series, it's all good practice going through this qualifying process. Understanding how quickly the tyres switch on, understanding how hard you can push the tyres before they lose their peak performance. And we're seeing there that the 007 entry of Ty Delaney has got a 10-second race time penalty for impeding. Now, presumably he'll have to serve that during his first pit stop, I would imagine. We'll get confirmation on that from race control, but that's normally how it would work in that situation, I think.
We actually had a bit of a weird one in the last round with Job Stewart, because you can certainly take it in the pit stop, but you don't have to. So he, I believe, didn't understand that he could take it during the pit stop and ended up taking it at the end of the race, which, given that there looked like there might have been a late race safety car, could have really burned him. Fortunately, he got away with it. But it can be taken in the pit stop or at the end of the race. One
of the other points that we should make, I think I talked before about Michael Taliancic and the fact that he was potentially outside qualification, but because he won the V8 Veterans title, he has actually earned a golden ticket into the main series. So technically, he will qualify as a result of that, even if he doesn't finish in the top 20 in the points within this qualifying series.
Oh, wide there. Just a few drivers just having that red hot go. I've noticed how much marbles is on the edge of the racetrack too. Jay and I were talking about that at the start of this session, is that we were a bit surprised about how much build-up was there on the outside of the racetrack. So I guess it doesn't take much, especially with a little bit of track knowledge that they're all trying to chase around here. If you get one of these corners wrong, going a little bit deep, touch those marbles, you are going to sort of go rough wide real quick. Like the field is now just, there's a couple of movers and shakers. People at the back there, I think they've given up on their times. I think at this stage, Jared's going to hold on. We've got the checkered flags out on the session, and I think that might be the field. So Jared Filsell looks like he's held on over Beau Albert and Jake Maloney, your top three for here at Fuji.
So confirmation of your qualifying results. So yes, Jared Filsell will take another pole position ahead of Beau Albert. That's really a stunning performance from Beau Albert, who came into this season without a lot of experience in these supercars, but he's just been getting better and better with practice. Then it's Jake Maloney back to Griffin Gardner, Matthew Bowler and Forznell Narvi, Damien Johnston, Luke Mitchinson, Jordan Ross and Job Stewart rounding out the top 10.
Well, so far so good. I mean, we're all setting up for this this one. I'm really looking forward to it. 45 laps around here, 2 pit stops. These guys have got their work cut out for them. And I do like a little bit of that unknown about this racetrack where, you know, how are these cars going to go after about 10 laps or so, and how they're going to start to feel, and do the tyres go off? You know, how does all this play out? Are we going to see a safety car? These are the things that we're going to have to start thinking about. And obviously the teams will start playing out in the back of their mind as well.
Indeed, so 45 laps will be the race distance. That's 205.3 k's. A couple of compulsory pit stops to be taken as well. And one of the things that we always say with the 2 pit stop format is that there's a bit of a variation in the amount of fuel, whether or not teams choose to change tyres during the pit stop. We expect that there'll probably be tyre changes for everyone in both pit stops, but still potential for some variation in the fuel loads and the lengths of those pit stops. So that'll be something for us to keep an eye on. Now, the big talking point tonight is the battle to get into the top 20 in the points. We've got a few of the drivers that are on the bubble, sort of sitting around that 18th to 21st zone joining us. And we'll start off with Damien Johnstone, who is currently 18th in the points coming into tonight. But Damien, a pretty decent qualifying effort for yourself. You have qualified inside the top 10. How was your session?
Yeah, can't complain. Just got to do the harder bit now and get the race finished to get the points.
How much pressure are you feeling tonight, given the tightness of the point situation in that zone from 16th to about 22nd or 23rd?
I mean, the pressure's there, but I try not to think about it. Just got to. I know I can do it. I just got to finish today, so we'll see where we end up.
Part of the Synergy Sim Racing squad, how closely have you been working with your teammates this week to come up with a race setup to help you qualify for the main series?
Pretty much all week from Friday, so big shout out to the boys. We made some tweaks after last night's race in another series, so hopefully the car's good for tonight.
Well, all the best, Damien. Before we let you go, I've got Jake Burr and also Sandman in the commentary box. Any questions for Damien, gents?
I was going to say, it's probably the silliest question on the grid, but how are the nerves, mate? You know, it pretty much all comes down to tonight. We're going to be asking all our drivers, how are you feeling at the moment?
I feel pretty good. Nerves are definitely there, but yeah, just got to get the points and get it done tonight. It's the last round.
Well, on behalf of myself, mate, keep it clean. You know, you got 45 laps in front of you. Don't stress too much. We will be keeping an eye on those live points. And, mate, hopefully we're talking to you at the end of the night and we get to talk to you pretty much throughout 2024.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Look forward to it. Cheers.
Thanks, Damien. One of the other drivers who is on the bubble, scored in 19th in the standings coming into tonight, is Job Stewart. Now, off the top, Job, I think we need to say a big congratulations on an excellent debut in the Super 2 series at Bathurst on the weekend, where you had a second place finish in the second race of the weekend behind the reigning champion Kai Allen. But now it's back into the virtual world. How was qualifying tonight?
Yeah, thanks guys. Qualifying probably not really where I wanted to be, down in 10th. I kind of missed out on the toe on that final run, but still, you know, there or thereabouts and just inside that top 10. So, yeah, looking forward to the race now. It's going to be a long one.
How do you think strategy is going to play out tonight?
I think it's going to be pretty important. Like at this track, you know, with the draft and stuff, it'll just be about staying with that front pack, and then, you know, everyone will be looking to see who dives off into the pits first. And I think, you know, if you go in by yourself, you're going to be stuck out stranded. So you kind of want to stay with the pack and, yeah, try and find the right time to pit.
As you're on the grid, mate, you're getting ready for the start of this race. I touched on it before, the nerves for the moment. How are you feeling? It's a little bit of a different racetrack that we've seen for a lot of these drivers, so there's a little bit of an unknown as this race goes on, but how are you feeling as you're gearing up for this race, 45 laps?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm not too bad at the moment, but I'm sure as the race goes on and everyone settles into their positions, you know, the nerves will start to kick in a fair bit more when you start thinking about your strategy and stuff like that. So, yeah, not too bad for the moment, but we'll see how we go, I guess.
And Lockie touched on that you had a busy week at the mountain. So how much time and effort have you had to be able to put in as far as getting your head around Fuji?
Yeah, not really much at all, to be honest. I only got home yesterday and then was at work today and just got home and jumped on the sim for an hour. So I think that probably reflects with my qualifying that I haven't done many laps. But yeah, hopefully I can get faster as the race goes on.
All the best, mate. Keep it clean, and hopefully we're talking to you at the end of the night.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, Job.
That was Job Stewart. Now we'll have a chat to the driver who is right on the bubble, the driver who sits in position 20 in the standings coming into tonight, and that is Brady Baldwin, who has qualified in 18th position. Brady, you're right in the thick of the action in the mid-pack. What's your plan for the race?
Try and survive lap one, honestly. It bit us at Hockenheim, got an incident, had to drive through the field and salvage a decent result, which got us a little bit of a buffer back to P21. But yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult to overtake here tonight. So I think the key would just be stay clean and whatever happens, happens.
Given how delicately poised the championship situation is, how closely are you going to be watching your rivals, and how much number crunching have you done to work out where you need to finish relative to your rivals to ensure your spot in the top 20?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it for the last 2 weeks, to be honest, but I'll try not to think about it during the race because I'll just get distracted about other things and not focus on my driving because it's not the car I'm familiar with too much. I come from a dirt background, so it's a pretty big difference, and yeah, just trying to keep the nose clean throughout the race, and wherever we finish.
Jake Burton's with me in the commentary box, and Jake, you've got a question for Brady.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Brady, obviously you're sitting right on the bubble there. I know some drama happened actually with our team last year in this final round of the qualifying series, but have you and any of your SSR teammates sort of had the discussion about, you know, if I'm on the bubble and I need another spot, will you get out of my way kind of thing? Is there anything like that that's been discussed with you guys?
Not with me anyway, so I think we're just going to race it out like we always do, and you know, if it comes to it, maybe, you know, Jordan might fall back for me and, you know, sacrifice himself. I don't think so. We're all racers at heart, so We'll just race for every position on our own and see where we end up.
Yeah, keep it simple, mate. Love it. Well, good luck tonight.
Thank you, Jake. Appreciate it.
And finally, we've got time to chat to one of the drivers who's on the outside and looking in. The driver who's currently 21st in the standings needs to try and make up one position in the championship to get into that top 20 and qualify for the main series, and that is Andre Yusuf. But Andre, you've qualified a bit further back down in 29th position, so your work's going to be cut out tonight. What's the plan of attack from here?
Yeah, mate, very, very frustrating quali. Yeah, definitely not the best spot to start, make positions. But yeah, we just got to avoid the chaos unfolding in front and make as many overtakes as possible and finish as high as possible to get that P20.
All right, Andre, well, we're only about 60 seconds, I believe, away from the race starting, so we'll let you to get the race face on and wish you all the very best for tonight.
Cheers, lads. Thank you.
There we go. It's going to be all about the mathematics tonight. You get the feeling, and just there having a chat to Brady Baldwin. He's sitting in 20th position, and we heard him say that he's been thinking for the last 2 weeks about the drivers that he needs to beat, about, you know, where he has to finish relative to his rivals, and that's where the team communication is going to be all important. Having a spotter who tells you who you're racing and feeds information to you about what position you need to be in, that is going to be absolutely critical. We saw it last year with Josh Muggleson. If you're in a position that's good enough to secure a spot in the top 20, you don't need to be making unnecessary risks when it comes to overtaking other cars. But conversely, if you're a bit further back, you might need a spotter who can say, hey, you need a few more points. You need to make up X number of positions if you want to finish in the top 20. So, yes, our producer Jay Kennedy will be keeping us up to date with live standings as we get ourselves set for a race start here. The final round of the qualifying series for the Logitech G Pro Invitational A Series. Jared Filsell on pole. Oh, Albert alongside on the front row. The lights out and away we go. Good start from our pole sitter Filsell, and he will be comfortably ahead of Bo Albert and will be able to swing across and assume the racing line as they head down into turn number 1. The track narrows up here. It's a funnel effect. So we'll hold our breath and we'll see if they all manage to get through cleanly. They're still running 2 and 3 wide in some sections of the circuit. Seems like they've made it through turn 1 okay, but they'll need to sort themselves out and get into single file as they negotiate their way through the next sequence of corners.
It's been a relatively clean start, and how would the nerves be for our bubble drivers? Obviously seeing what's in front of them, all these cars jockeying for position, just praying that no one gets into each other, because the last thing they want to do is get up in someone else's into it. We can see one of the TTR cars back there off on the wild, just rejoining now. That's Kirk Stenberg. So got away with no damage, but just lost a little bit of track. Oh, there's this car down backwards too. So Brian Borg facing the wrong way. He's lost the toe of the field. But man, there's a little bit happening now. The first part of the lap was quite tame, but now it's all starting to happen with even locked tyres and everything going on.
Drivers desperate to try and get some early track position. As we've seen right through this series, track position can be at a premium, and if you find yourself bearing down the order early on, it can be hard to recover. But conversely, if you can get a good start and gain a couple of spots in the earlier laps, those spots can be very, very valuable as the race progresses. And you can see that already. Oh, wow, they're just about 4 wide heading down into turn number 1. I think one of the drivers there might have got a slow exit from the final corner, and it's a slingshot manoeuvre here. Kenneth Latter is in the middle of this 3 wide pack of cars. Is that Yusuf coming down on the inside, I think, in one of the Altus Esports cars it is, so he's gained a couple of spots there.
Oh, how's the action there? They were 4 wide going into that tight right-hander. Like, they gave each other as much room as they could, but man, they still had elbows out. They're not mucking around. It's only the end of lap number 1, and boy, oh boy, they're having a red-hot go at the moment. Oh, Stenberg, you can see a little bit of damage to that guard too as well, so he's pushing on now after his little bit of excursion a couple laps ago, but look at that Fishy Motorsports car in front of him's got some damage too, so it's all happening here at the start.
More overtaking happening a little bit further back now, just to give you a bit of an idea. So that's Latter and Hall going at it, but Yusuf made up 7 spots there on the opening lap. So from 29th on the grid, he's up to second position. Here's a replay of what happened to Brian Borg on the opening lap. And he copped a hit from Stenberg, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
In one of the TTR cars. That'll be something that the officials will be having a closer look at, I would imagine, because nose-to-tail contacts like that is normally a fairly slam-dunk situation.
Yeah, that's what we saw the tail end of that when we saw Stenberg out wide. So leave that up to the stewards. But yeah, they're not mucking about at the start. And look at this draft at the front. You can see just how much. Drivers covering and blocking. Geez, that could have got ugly. If that was a little bit more tighter on the contact, that could have been 2 cars off into the fence big time.
Well, Richard Hampstead chased Jordan Ross all the way across, almost into the pit entry, and then switched back to the outside. That was a little bit naughty because you're not really supposed to be driving that defensively in a straight line, and if there was some overlap there and Jordan Ross had to get out of it, then I think Hampstead probably needed to give him a bit more racing room and not move so aggressively into the right-hand side of the circuit. But anyway, it's play on between those two for now.
Yeah, thankfully they both got away with it. It's, I guess the pressure's there, isn't it? You're so focused on getting a good exit, and you know that as soon as you make that little bit of an exit, especially onto that front straightaway, you know that you're a little bit of a sitting duck, especially if the guys behind you get it right. They also get a little bit of that toe, and at the end of the day, you know, you just got to try to either ride it out or block as much as you can.
And the thing there is that Richard Hampstead, coming into tonight, he's 13th in the standings. So should be relatively secure in terms of qualification, but can't afford a bad result. So you do have to drive with a bit of self-preservation in mind when you're in Richard Hampstead's position.
Yeah, you'd like to think that the team would be in his ear a little bit, just seeing that he's in the top 10 at the moment. That is enough at the moment just to see how it all plays out. Last thing you need is some contact or a silly decision where he has a drive-through penalty. We saved a little bit of slow-mo action. You can see the car just using those curbs, getting out wide on the grass. That's the last thing they want to see. But good use of the curbs around here, and they'd be really enjoying that.
So Brady Baldwin, who we chatted to at the top of the broadcast, he is currently sitting in 19th position. So the position that he started the race in, hasn't gained or lost any spots. He's probably content just to play it a little bit conservatively at the moment. Such a long way to go, obviously, and a couple of compulsory pit stops to be taken by each driver in the field. Given it's a 45-lap race, the most obvious strategy is to pit on lap number 15 and then pit again on lap number 30, splitting the race up into 3 equal segments. And we're hearing that car number 9 of Ben Christensen is going to be getting a 5-second penalty for contact with Michael Whiting. And also the number 727 entry of Chad Lewis has got a 5-second penalty for contact with Ben Christensen. So the steward's getting busy handing out some penalties. The one that we haven't seen is Kurt Stenberg. I haven't seen any message about a penalty for him, so it's probably one that our stewards are still looking at the moment.
As we watch this race unfold, Jake, how do you feel? You put your driver's helmet on. How do you think this race is playing out? They've been pretty aggressive at the start, but we expect that for pretty much any round of the racing. Now you can see everyone's sort of started a single file, just getting it into a rhythm. Is that what you pretty much expect to see from tonight?
Yeah, that's it. I think, there's definitely going to be a clear distinction between those who are sort of safe and just need to get it home and those who really need to fight for something. Like you saw, I've been talking all season about Richard and how aggressively he can sort of defend. But I'm not sure he really needed to be that defensive at this point in the race, as sort of Lockie touched on. But this part of the field we're looking at now is where it really starts to get serious. These are your drivers who are on the bubble where every position can make a difference, because there's not a lot of points. That's something else we didn't really talk about. There's not a lot of points between sort of 16th and about 23rd. So, every position counts for these guys.
So here's our first look at the live standings. So as things stand at the moment, Jared Filsell would have a perfect score from the 4 qualifying rounds, 800 points ahead of Forsen El Nabi and Bo Albert. So that's how the top 10 would look. But it's what happens beyond that that's a bit more interesting. So at the moment, there you go. So, Brady Baldwin would get himself in. Connor Nixon would actually fall back to 20th. We'll have a look at some more numbers.
Those two are actually on track together at the moment, I'm pretty sure. So that'll make that really interesting. If they're 19th and 20th, those two are racing each other right now. So that's really, really interesting.
That raises the pressure, doesn't it? You know, knowing that you are right with the big dive here under brakes. It's a big one. Going to pull it up. Not quite. Lost a little bit of traction here in the rear. And in making that move, has now lost 2 positions. So got one of them back. But, yeah, that's a big dive in that part of the racetrack. It's so, you carry so much speed and you're just desperate on the brakes. But unfortunately, the rear got away from him. But how much would you want to know, Jake, as far as the guys racing around you? Is it too early? It's only lap 6 of 45. There's so much to play out. Are you the kind of driver that wants to be kept in the loop with points at this stage, being that it's so early in the race?
I don't think so, to be honest. I think at the end of the day, even the people who are going to miss out on this Logitech series this year are probably very, very, very... Look, oh, there's a car around in the background, sorry.
Oh, yes.
Chad Lewis. So he was one of the drivers who got penalised earlier on, but complete your point there for us, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think, you know, even the drivers who are outside of the top 20 are really, really talented drivers. And I think they know how to race. They know what they're doing. I think they just need to execute. Just focus. It's just another race. You can only do as well as you can do. Just get your positions, drive as quickly as you can, and get the car home clean, because ultimately that's going to be the best outcome for your championship no matter what. As soon as you start thinking, God, I need to be in front of that car that's 2 cars in front of me, you start over-driving, overcooking it and making mistakes, which, you know, I think we've seen already in this race, and I think we've just seen the penalty come down for Kurt Stenberg as well.
Yeah, 15 seconds coming the way of Kurt Stenberg. He's currently in 26th position. Came into this round 10th in the qualifying series, so not totally safe if the results don't go his way, and that penalty is going to sting him even a little bit more. So we'll go back to a replay. So this is from the incident for Chad Lewis. And did he cop a tap? Yes, he did. And because the car's loaded at that part of the racetrack, that was enough to unsettle the car. And car Chad Lewis into a bit of a spin. Jared Filsell continues to lead, but Bo Albert sticking right with him. I reckon this is about the best that I've seen Bo Albert drive in one of these supercars. This has been a really stout performance from him so far.
Yeah, he'd be absolutely chuffed too when he looks out the front window, sees Jared Filsell, looks out the rear in the rearview mirror, sees Jake Maloney behind him. He's like, how good's this? But yeah, he's definitely staying in touch. He's doing really well. And really good to see a turn of pace for him too.
I actually caught up with Bo Albert the other day because he lives with me in the Victorian, or in the same regional Victorian town as me in Ballarat, and he talked about just how much he's enjoying the challenge of racing these supercars and coming to grips with them, and he has been one of the big improvers right through this qualifying series, on target to comfortably book himself a spot in the main series. But while he's putting the pressure on Jared Filsell, Jake Maloney sitting there in 3rd position, maintaining and watching brief. The battles are continuing a little bit further down the field. This is Richard Hampstead, who has now fallen back behind Jordan Ross and might lose another spot here to Zach Rattray White as well, who's looking up on the outside, not quite able to execute the switchback manoeuvre there. So Jordan Ross up into 10th position with that move on Hampstead.
I know, without stating the obvious, you know, we've seen so many drivers at this stage already receive penalties as far as, you know, adding an extra time to their pit stops. That's the last thing that, you know, anyone wants, especially if you're in a position where you could be on the bubble. You know, it's easy to, I guess, take that out of consideration just based on your drive, and you don't want to get yourself in a silly predicament where you tag someone and, be it accidental. The last thing you need is something that could just delay you and have a chance at a penalty like that. If there's a safety car and you have a penalty like that and it's not served at the right time, you could find yourself right at the back of the grid, and it makes it almost impossible to make up the time because, it's lap 8. But once we get to lap 45, that's it. The whole thing's done and dusted, and that decides whether you get in or not.
More moves happening on the main straight. It really is overtaking paradise here with that long braking zone heading into turn 1, and I reckon Richard Hampstead might potentially lose a couple of spots here. Zach Rattray White completes the passing manoeuvre before they even get to the braking zone, and coming up on the inside is Sean McNamara as well. So that's another couple of spots lost there for Richard Hampstead. He's back to 13th. Car 111 of Teo Sereno has got a 5-second penalty for that contact that he made with Chad Lewis a lap or so ago.
The stewards have been busy first 10 laps of this race. I mean, it's all been happening, but I guess sometimes that comes down to, yes, there's a little bit of pressure being that's the last race, but I guess it's that little bit of an unknown of a racetrack that we're not all familiar with either. There's drivers that may have never raced here at all. So I guess sometimes that comes down to that, where people are just running a little bit aggressive and, the track catches you out a little bit just because of the lack of mileage around here.
In the real life Supercars Championship, I know that the driving standards observer Craig Baird plays a very active and hands-on role in terms of talking to the drivers and ensuring that they understand what's expected in terms of conduct. Last year for this series we had Thomas Randall as the driving standards observer. How much of a role did he play, Jake, in terms of communication with the drivers and letting them know what is and is not acceptable?
From my experience, because there was a little bit of it from me, he played a bit of a role in the appeals process, probably more than anything else. So obviously, if you felt a penalty wasn't just, you have the opportunity in this series to appeal that, and you could obviously jump in and Thomas would listen and either tell you were right or tell you were wrong, basically, which obviously is all in accordance with the rules, and that's been fantastic. But I do agree some conversation with the drivers even before the rounds from someone like Thomas would be very, very good. Obviously, his experience and his stature in motorsport would be very helpful, as we've got another incident that's happened.
Yeah, that one's not going to be looked upon very fondly by race control. Tyson Broad, one of the drivers involved in that accident, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see some more penalties being dished out very shortly as well. This is the battle for position 20 between Zach Vlasblom and Daniel Hall. Hall currently sitting in 21st position, looking to make up that spot. Daniel Hall currently 26th in the points. Zach Vlasblom a bit further down in 36th, so both these drivers would need a fair bit to go their way tonight if they're to qualify inside the top 20. Vlasblom in particular is exactly 200 points away from 20th position, so he'd basically need to win the race and have a lot of the drivers in front fail to score or score very poorly if he was to be a chance of qualification. Now, pit stop time. Richard Hampstead comes in. This is a very early stop. I was talking about lap number 15 if you wanted to split the race into thirds, but Richard Hampstead has come in after 10 laps. So going for a fresh set of tyres and going to try the undercut strategy.
Yeah, it's a bit of a surprise, is it? I guess you're probably in the loop there, Jake, as far as strategy at TTR. I guess they probably would do that on the fly a little bit too. Are you surprised about him coming in at this stage?
Well, I'm almost wondering if there's something more to that, because when we were watching Richard getting eaten up before, just after he got passed by...
That's cool. Sorry, Jake.
It's all right. Looks like he might have been turned around. But I was going to say, Richard, he was racing a few cars that, with all respect to the people he's racing, Richard historically is quite a bit quicker than. So I wondered if maybe there was a little bit more to this story, maybe a little bit of damage, maybe some hurt tyres or something like that, and he's just doing something different to either, clear some of that damage or maybe, get a fresh set on, get some clear air. But Richard, seems to be struggling tonight.
Interesting as well to say that there are a few other drivers who pitted early. So Andre Youssef and Michael Whiting both came in on lap number 8. For Andre Youssef, I'm wondering if he's just gone for a bit of an aggressive strategy. We talked before about how he's outsider looking in, needs some results to go his way tonight if he's to penetrate that top 20. So he might be looking for a bit of an aggressive strategy to try and make up some spots with an undercut as a way of buying himself a spot in that top 20. A bit further back, this is Job Stewart. So he's made pretty good progress because he started this race in 10th position and he has climbed a few spots. We just saw him making the pass there on Matthew Bowler. So Job Stewart up into P7. And more pit stops happening. Ian Ford, Kurt Stenberg both taking stops. Kurt Stenberg, this is going to be quite a long stop because he's got that 15-second time penalty to serve.
I reckon that's a good idea by him taking that and getting it over and done with. And I think that's probably a rule that could happen, is that you should serve your penalty in the race and not have it tagged on the end of the race. So if there was happened to be a safety car a little bit later, that's something that he doesn't have to worry about now. He's got that penalty over and done with. The nature of this racetrack, he's still going to stay on the lead lap. So get that over and done with. And if a safety car comes out, punches his field back up again, and then it's almost just he's back in the action again.
Has the benefit as well as, I think you mentioned this with Joe last week, man, is sort of, you know that where you finish is where you finish. You don't have to worry about sort of, doing all the maths and working out if I have to push hard to get lap time and that sort of thing. Where he finishes on the road is going to be where he finishes now, so it's a fresh reset.
Couple of more drivers opting for pit lane. Lock up into the line, right up to the line there. So Teo really taking it to the last minute. I wasn't sure. It looked like it was going to be a drag race into turn 1, and they both peeled off into pit lane. So, getting the pit stops over and done with. Lap 13 of 45. Like we said, there's 2 compulsory stops that these teams of drivers need to do. So it's good to get that one out over and done with. But I imagine for the pack up the front, which we just had a look at, they've got a nice little train going on too. They're all sort of in touch with everyone. I don't think they're all too concerned about sort of pitting at this stage, but I think it will be a little bit of follow the leader. I think once someone peaks, I think everyone else may do the same thing.
Still feels a little bit early for me, Sam, man, though. I think, the nature of a race like this is staying in the draft is going to be beneficial if you're behind a car that's quite a bit quicker. I think that's what you see in the front pack at the moment. Jared's sort of just pulling everyone along real nicely, and all these other cars like, yep, I'll just take his tow, I'll save some fuel, I'll stay out, and then I'll have better tyres at the end. So I'm not sure that these drivers who are pitting now are going to be too happy with that decision come another 20 laps.
One thing I do like, though, is that there's a little bit of strategy. Everyone's trying something different. Sometimes there's nothing worse than a race where everyone does the exact same thing. Everyone pits on lap number 10. Everyone pits on lap number 30. Do you know what I mean? So it is good that there's some people rolling the dice. We see Dan Hall. He's fired off into pit lane. He found himself in a little bit of a battle with a couple of cars there. So I think he's taken the opportunity to get some fresh tyres, get a little bit of clean air, and then he'll be able to tackle on and push on as the race goes on. But it is nice that there are some drivers that are just mixing it up a little bit. But as we see back to the front again, I think these drivers are just quite content that they're all in a line, just grabbing that tow. It's the free drag down the front straight away, and they'll be thanking Jared towards the end of the race, where they're all just pretty happy and sitting there, not pushing too hard. And I think they're just happy for the laps just to tick away at this stage.
So most of the pit stop times that we've seen so far have been around the 44 to 48-second bracket, but Kurt Stenberg with that 15-second penalty was in the pits for a bit over 60 seconds. 62 seconds to be precise, which has pushed him back to position number 34. But the good news for him is that he does now have some clear track to work with. So he's not in any danger of getting lapped anytime soon. And he's also a fair way behind the cars in front. So now it's just a case of punching out fast lap times, gradually railing in the cars ahead, and then picking them off one by one without any more contact. More pit stops coming up here as a whole bunch of cars come in, including Zach Rattray White, Jacob O'Reilly, Sean McNamara, Hayden Veld, Josh Thomas, Brady Baldwin, Connor Nixon, Brody Sentence, and Kenneth Latter, all in pit lane at the moment. So we're getting closer to that lap number 15, the lap that I described as the magic number if you want to split the race evenly and, I suppose, divide the tyre wear evenly across your 3 sets of tyres.
The tyre game's always interesting, isn't it? You know, there's some of these drivers that pitted a bit earlier that we were talking about, whether that was the right call or not. You know, do they now push on a little bit and maybe go longer in this middle stint to have something fresh towards the end? It's one of those coin tosses, isn't it? Because you know that when you're on those old tyres, you are going to give up that track position, but you don't want to leave the charge too late towards the end to make those gains on the fresh tyres. So I guess it's sort of catch-22 sometimes, isn't it?
And in comes Job Stewart, also Jordan Ross in the pits as well. So a couple of our top 10 players coming down pit lane for their compulsory stop.
It's going to be borderline speeding for Job there. That was pretty late. I've just had a look at it in the replay. It's 60 k's an hour along here, and he was doing 75 at the line. So that's tight. I know iRacing does give you a fair bit of play, and it does vary track to track. Some tracks you can smash the line a long way over the speed and get away with it. So I'm curious to see how long this stop is for Job, but it looks good. So I'd say he's probably gotten away with it.
44.8 seconds the time in pit lane for Job Stewart. That's one of the quickest stops that we've seen. 45 seconds for Jordan Ross. Both those drivers out and on their way again. And they have made it out onto the track ahead of Zach Rattray White. It was the next car to have completed a compulsory pit stop. So the top 9 cars then are yet to pit at this stage. Jared Filsell, your race leader, ahead of Bo Albert, Jake Maloney, Griffin Gardner, and Forza Nel Navi completing the top 5.
The nature of this racetrack too, the leaders don't have to worry too much about coming across too much of the lap traffic at this stage either, being that it's, you know, reasonably early in this race and the length of the racetrack. So, you know, thankfully, I guess that's one thing that they don't have to worry about, but there's plenty of opportunities. We see a couple of more cars into the pit lane, but plenty of opportunities down that front straight as we've seen for drafting and passing. So the leaders don't have too much to worry about just yet, but it definitely does play its role at some racetracks that we go to.
So the lead pack all still very tightly bunched together. I mean, one of the upsides of pitting early and going for the undercut strategy is that you will get the fresh tyres so that you can get a gain that way. But conversely, you're not going to be in a pack of cars and you're possibly going to miss out on the advantage of the slipstream or the tow from the car in front. So that could be the downside, as we see that Zach Vlasblom is the next driver to incur the wrath of the steward. So he's got a 5-second penalty for contact with Tyson Broad.
A bit into driver mode again, Jake. If you didn't have any teammates around with you and you wanted to pit with someone, would you, or have you ever sort of reached out to see if anyone would be interested to pit with you? A bit like sort of what we see NASCAR style with Talladega and Daytona?
Probably not outside the team, but definitely within the same team before. Yeah, it's certainly been a discussion. But the tricky thing is I understand the need to do it at tracks like, your Daytonas, Talladegas in NASCAR. But ooh.
It's a big slide cut across the racetrack. Craig did everything he could from not nailing the car in front, so had a massive moment. That's obviously, no doubt there's going to be an off track and a cut track, but man, that could have been a lot bigger. Sorry that it cut you off there, Jake.
So I think that was a teammate too, so I think that would have been double disaster had that gone pear-shaped. But yeah, good job to keep it out of his teammate. But I was just going to say, yeah, it's the tricky thing you have with these supercars is it's quite often, not good to actually pit all at the same time, especially if you're in a pack together, because you lose so much time on that pit entry. There's a chance you could wipe someone out from the back. There's a chance you could crash coming into pit lane. There's lots of awkwardness to it. And of course, as we now look at the replay of Craig Schultz just firing past his teammate there.
How good's that?
So he's one of the drivers yet to pit, and he was involved in a bit of a battle with some cars that had already done pit stops. So that's always one of the struggles if you're out there on worn tyres, battling against cars that have got fresh tyres, and it looks like he just got caught out there. But thankfully, the carnage was averted. Jordan Ross on fresh tyres has just punched out the fastest lap of the race at a 1:35. So Jordan Ross, having taken his pit stop, he's out there on fresh tyres at the moment and has a bit of a tow from Job Stewart going very quickly. Job Stewart also the 35 too. So a couple of the cars that have pitted punching out some quick times. So there could be a bit of an undercut on here for a couple of those drivers that have stopped earlier. And I think the race leaders will have to think about reacting to that and coming in to cover them very shortly.
Well, something to note is, I think you mentioned before, Lockie, that most of the pit stop times are looking at being between the sort of 40-45 second range. Job Stewart is now 44 seconds off the race lead. So he's suddenly very much a factor with these front group when they decide to pit.
And so too, Jordan Ross is potentially going to pop up somewhere inside the top three as well after this first round of pit stops. So, of course, it does all balance out as the race progresses, because later on, the drivers who are taking their pit stops later will have less distance to go and they'll have fresher tyres towards the end. But it may be that they sacrifice some track position during this phase of the race. Ian Ford and Richard Hampstead battling at the moment. That's the contest for 17th and 18th position. A couple of drivers who have already taken their pit stops. At this stage, the top 7 are yet to pit. Phil, Albert, Maloney, Gardner, Elnabi, Mitchinson and Visma.
We were talking about Hampstead earlier in the race, where he found himself sort of in 9th, 10th position. Now in sort of 18th. I wonder if he's starting to think about that. Is that playing on his mind a little bit? Obviously there's still some cars that we see. There's Bo Albert in the lane. And we see Griffin Gardner. A lot of these front runners are now decided to peel off. So he knows that there's still a couple of cars that need to pit. But I wonder if he starts stressing the fact that he's a little bit further down the field than he'd like. Thankfully, he's got a little bit of a points buffer up his sleeve. But it'd be definitely something that be playing on his mind as these laps dwindle off.
This is going to be close here. So our leading group of cars, some of them but not all of them, have pitted. So Phil Sell and Maloney have stayed on the track, but Albert, Gardner, Elnabi all in. Now they're just coming out now, but Job Stewart and Jordan Ross are at full speed on warm tyres flying down the straight. This is potentially going to be a very interesting situation when they get down to turn number 1. And they will just make it out ahead of Job Stewart, but Stewart's going to have the momentum and he's going to have tyres that are up to temperature. So Albert, Gardner, Elnabi possibly going to be a bit vulnerable for the next few corners.
That's all they'd be praying for, is that they can just get up to speed, get those tyres to come up to temperature over the next half a lap or so. If they can hold position, they'll find themselves just starting to pull away from that group now, especially with the fresher tyres. I don't think it'll be too much longer now before you see Jared and Jake Maloney in as well. They're the last of the 2 leaders up there to make their stop. So I would imagine that would be fairly soon, if not this lap by.
So Bo Albert had a bit of a slow pit stop there, 47.6 seconds, and has cost him a couple of positions. He's fallen back in behind both Forza and El Nabi and Griffin Gardner. So El Nabi now the first of the cars that stopped, as we see our 2 leaders, Phil Sell and Maloney, coming in to complete their first stops. And again, this is going to be critical to see where they rejoin the racetrack relative to Forza and El Nabi, who is heading down the main straight and is up to full speed right now.
Yeah, well, as he was coming onto the front straight, Jared hadn't even got to his box by that time. So it is going to be a drag race for these guys. I think they're going to hold on here because they haven't even left the lane. So there they are. So looks like Phil Sell, he's going to drop, what's he dropped? 2-3 spots maybe 4 if he's not careful. So, but it's I guess what? It's only 1 lap fresher tyres difference, but maybe he took a little bit more fuel.
So Phil Sell and Maloney have come out just in front of and just behind Bo Albert. So that will move Forza and El Nabi to now being the race leader ahead of Griffin Gardner.
That was pretty much as they sat when they came in, though. So I have to say that maybe Griffin and Forzan are the ones that have gone light in that first pit stop, because otherwise the field pretty much stays how it is. Because I saw Bo definitely lost a lot of time to Forzan. Forzan must have gone very, very light in that first stop.
So it could be that Phil Sell and Albert are able to jump back to the head of the queue in the second round of pit stops. We are working at lap number 21 at the moment, so coming up towards the halfway point of this race. And just having a look at our Progressive Championship point score. So Andre Youssef at the moment is actually buying himself into the top 20 here, but only by 4 points from Connor Nixon. So that's going to be an interesting one, because Connor Nixon's currently 18th in the race. Andre Youssef sitting in 19th position. The one who's going to fall out of the top 20 with positions as they are at the moment is Scott Gamble, who I don't believe is even racing tonight. So that's a shame for Scott Gamble, because he was on target to qualify, but he's not made an appearance tonight, and as a result of that, he is on target to fall outside of the top 20. We'll keep you up to date on that as the race progresses. Still a long way to go. Still another round of pit stops to play out here.
This is going to turn into, I guess, a bit of a quiet part of the race now. I guess there's a little bit going on here, but, you know, everyone's sort of got themselves into a rhythm. They know where they're at. Richard's slowly starting to pick off another couple of more cars. So 16th now. Just made up the couple of more spots since we last saw him, but it's not going all his own way. He's still got a bit of pressure happening on around him, but still plenty of laps up his sleeve way out. So it's not panic stations at this stage, but he's still doing okay.
This is the lead battle at the moment. So you've got El Nabi, Gardner, Phil Sell. Jake Maloney has made the move through on Bo Albert. So Maloney up to position 4.
What do you reckon, Jake, that some of these drivers will take a chance at maybe just saving a bit of fuel while they're in this little bit of a train here? Because that obviously will shorten up that last pit stop that these drivers need to do if they can save a little bit.
Yeah, possibly. I think the likes of Maloney, Jared and Bo, they know they're already on a fuel advantage. So I think for them, it's all about making sure they don't let Forzan get away. You don't want Griffin to sort of let Forzan get away. So I think for them, they're probably going to want to attack Griffin pretty quickly and then just manage the gap to Forzan, knowing that they're probably going to come out in front of him. But I just wanted to talk about Bo real quick. I actually think he's doing a really good job tonight. Like, you know, he's learning a huge amount, I imagine, from the guys he's racing. I actually heard of him on a podcast during the week talking about how he's sort of got a 1 or 2 year plan for how he wants to start to get good in this car, having never really given it a serious go before, and I actually really respected that. I think it was really cool, and he's probably learning a huge amount tonight, but it's been a really, really awesome result to stick with race winners like Maloney and Jared is an awesome effort.
He's quite the gun commentator as well, Bo Albert. He and I worked together on the Speed Cafe A-Series together back in COVID times and called a few of the old Just Send It series races together. And he's very articulate and well-spoken. Good to see him doing a good job. Here's a move on down the main straight with Jared Fuel pulling to the inside of Griffin Gardner. And that should be a fairly textbook move and completed by the time they get to the braking zone for turn 1. Meanwhile, Zach Blom's night is going from bad to worse. He's copped his second 5-second time penalty of the night for driving infringement on lap 20.
If race winds down, Jake, I guess, you start to focus on the season ahead, the form that Jared's been in. I guess it's no surprise. He's a good steerer. We've done an inaugural series champion. He's done everything right in this quali series, but there's no doubt he's going to be a real threat come the 2024 season. Is that something that you guys at TTR or yourself have thought about, knowing that you're probably going to have to deal with him throughout the year?
Oh, well, you got to deal with Jared every year. We've been doing it for 10 years now. So Jared's always quick. He's always going to be there. I think this quali series is going to be really good for Jared, because not that he really needs a confidence boost. I'm sure that, the many championships and dominant years he's had over the last 10 years is confidence enough. But he did have a rough year last year. He did have a couple really bad moments. So I think rolling into this series against some pretty good competition, like the likes of Maloney and Griffin, they're not slow. To come in here and to win 3 races, maybe another tonight, and to clean sweep the whole thing, I think it'll be a huge wad of confidence for him. I think he's going to be really formidable in those first couple of races of the proper series.
For yourself, Jake, have you identified any particular areas that you feel like you need to improve in order to be a title contender?
I think it's just making your bad rounds good. I think that's the same with any championship driver. You look at the likes of Jared, the likes of Madison, even James Scott last year did a really good job of this, but making sure that when you have a bad day, you still bring the car home in 4th or 5th or 6th. For me, it's last year in particular, for the whole first half of the year, I was really at the pointy end of the championship, but I just had, went to, I think it was Belle Isle, and finished 28th and 32nd and stuff like that, and that just murders you. There's no drop rounds in these series, so you have one of those rounds and it's pretty much unrecoverable. So I think as a championship driver, what you really need to be able to do is just make sure that you make the most of your bad days. It's kind of weird. You think championships are about winning races, but I actually think they're about not losing them, as silly as that sounds.
That was where Madison Down was particularly effective last year, because even if he was struggling at an event, he'd always find a way of salvaging points. We saw some of the other drivers were probably a bit quicker than Madison at some of the events, particularly the likes of James Scott. And, even Brady Myers probably had his measure at some rounds as well. But those drivers, James Scott in particular, we saw some strategic errors at a few rounds, and that cost him a lot of points. So that was where Madison was really able to maximise the advantage, and be interesting to see who his main rivals are in the title. We know that you're going to be strong again, Jake. We know that Brady Myers will be up there, Jared Filsell, James Scott, all going to be contenders. Ethan Grigolt's another one who is going to be in the conversation as well. Then you've got some other guys who showed some really impressive glimpses of form last year, like Luke Rosella, who won the Sandown 500. Let's see if they can take the next step towards becoming more regular front runners and threatening for the title.
Yeah, just as a side note, that move Connor Nixon just made on Richard Hampstead got him into the top 20. So that's a huge pass for him.
So, yeah, it sure is. Connor Nixon needs to keep marching forward here, because Andre Yusuf is only a few spots back. So if Connor Nixon keeps making up spots, Andre Yusuf needs to as well. At the moment, there's just 4 points difference between those two drivers. So we suspected that there was going to be a bit of tension in this battle for 20th, and that's certainly how it's playing out at the moment, because Nixon's there at the moment. But if Andre Yusuf could get past Brady Baldwin and or Richard Hampstead, he'd add some more points to his tally, which would mean that Connor Nixon would have to make up some more spots to secure his spot in the top 20. So, like I said, this is going to come right down to the wire. We have got 20 laps to go. Still another round of pit stops to take place as well.
Isn't it great that it's a short qualifying series, only 4 rounds, but for it to come down to the last race and the final laps where you just don't know whether you're going to make the qualifying bubble or not. I mean, that really steps it up a notch, and I would imagine get the butterflies going inside, because you know that every position can make or break you. So really, really big that what's happening now.
And that was a move up the inside. That was Brady Baldwin on Richard Hampstead. So Brady Baldwin's another one of the drivers in that group that's right on the bubble as well. He can't afford to be falling backwards. So that's a pretty critical pass there for Brady Baldwin to add some more points to his tally.
And nothing to take away from Brady, but we saw that Hampstead pitted reasonably early too compared to a lot of the other people. So I wonder if it's at a point now where it's starting to hurt his tyres and he'll start thinking about that next pit stop, because there is still quite a number of drivers that he's just in front of him that he can stay in touch with, and a pit stop might change all that as we check out this replay. Drive up the inside, just went a little bit deep under brakes, had to run wide. Thankfully there was no contact, but no harm, no foul, and he just push on now.
Good thing that there's a generous runoff down there at turn number 1, because we've seen a few drivers do that tonight where they've just gone a bit too deep into that first corner. And fortunately that runoff area means that they're generally able to recover fairly easily and continue on without heading out into the gravel trap or into the wall, as we see. This is Jared Filsell down the inside, and he's gone a bit too deep there. This is the battle for the lead with Forza El Nabi. And it looks like he had the move done there, but couldn't pull it up. And again, another driver having to use that runoff area at turn number 1.
It was a bit of a late dive. I was just about to say it looks like Jared's playing with his food a little bit. I didn't think it was going to be too much longer before he had a bit of a dive, and he threw it in there at the last second, didn't quite pull it up, but at the end of the day he's still close enough now. But it's a nice little battle between it's nice and close for the 4 or 5 guys that are just in shot now. A couple of laps difference on tyres, not too much to crow about, but I think Jared will be pretty cruisy here, and he may even get him next time down the front straight away.
All building up towards this last round of pit stops, isn't it? Which mustn't be too far away. In fact, we've already got a few drivers coming in for their second stop. Zach Vlasblom has come in for his second stop. Kenneth Latter, Brian Borg. And we're suspecting that probably within the next 3 or 4 laps, a lot of others will join them in taking their final stop. Here is the onboard shot from Jared Filsell. He came from a long way back, and to his credit, he almost pulled it up, but rather than pinching a brake and flat spotting a tyre, he elected to get out of it, head to the runoff area, and just ease back in behind Forza El Nabi. Here we go again. This is take 2. Once again, Filsell in the slipstream. This time decides that he's not going to come from that far back, and stays in behind El Nabi for the time being.
Good little puck here going on, isn't it? Like it's what's all happening between these. They know that they're pretty much safe with the points that they're at, but they can afford to have a little bit of a play and just a bit of a dive on each other. We just check this replay again. Looks fairly so. Oh, big wiggle! Oh, right in front of his teammate too. That's hold your breath stuff.
That was Jacob O'Reilly, and fortunately for him, he was able to gather it up and get back on. But he has lost a spot to Zach Rattray White as a result of that indiscretion. Now, one of the questions that's been raised is what happens if we have a tie for 20th, and I presume that what would happen in that situation is that it would go to a countback where we'd look at who has the most higher place race finishes.
I'll just check that one for you, mate. Give me a second.
And how crazy is it that it could possibly come down to that point where the points aren't going to be tied? You know, I don't know if I'm a driver, if I'm in that position where I want to know about that, because, you know, you're pretty much on the limit. You're giving it everything you got, and you probably, you know, I guess talking to just for myself, I'd probably be more likely to make a mistake knowing that it's that close with the points. So I don't know if I'd want to know.
I don't know. Do you do scissors, paper, rock to work it out? That seems to be a fairly common dispute resolution method. Here comes Richard Hampstead in. We saw that he was one of the drivers who stopped earlier for his first pit stop, and once again that looks like it's the case now. So coming in at the end of lap 29.
So I've just checked the rule, and the rule states exactly as you said, Lockie. It will go to the driver who has had the most amount of higher finishing positions. So in the case that they finished 7th twice and one's finished 7th once, and that's their best result of the year, the guy who has it twice will win. So be curious to see whether it's Andre or Connor who has the better result. But it's also worth noting that Connor currently has a 10-second penalty that is still yet to be served. So at the moment, I dare say it's all Andre Yusuf's.
Well, yeah, that could definitely mix things up. So at the moment they are actually tied on points, 448 points apiece. But yes, that 10-second penalty for Connor Nixon is probably going to mix things up a bit, and we imagine that he'll probably take that penalty in the next pit stop, so that at least he'll have time to try and fight back from it. We're not going to really have a proper understanding of how this is going to shake out until we get this final round of pit stops completed, which we're getting more of them heading in now. Zach Ray White, Jacob O'Reilly, Josh Thomas, all diving for the pits. Brady Baldwin's in the pits. Connor Nixon's in the pits as well, so presumably he will be serving out that 10-second time penalty during this pit stop, and then the pressure's going to be on to try and make up spots to get himself enough points to make it into the top 20. Back to the battle for the race lead at the moment, and Phil Selly was up there very close behind El Nabi. He went for that move for the lead at turn 1, but El Nabi's just been able to ease away a bit in the last couple of laps, and if anything, Phil Sell under a bit of pressure at the moment from Jacob Maloney.
Yeah, obviously Jared will be start thinking about he'll have some sort of idea that, you know, pit stops aren't too far away. At the end of the day, he's got himself well cemented for the season, and he knows that it's not crucial to get the win. But yeah, you can see he's just got that little bit of pressure from Maloney now. Maloney's looking quite pacey, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It'll be a drag race down the front straight to see if whether Maloney makes a move, possibly.
Well, that was a bit of an average exit from the last corner for Phil Sell there as well. He ran very wide out of the penultimate corner, and that meant that he didn't quite have the ideal line for the run into the final right-hander. Maloney was almost but not quite close enough to take advantage of that. So, yeah, that has allowed El Navi to skip away by about half a second at the front of this race, with Griffin Gardner and Bo Albert still right in touch as well. These top 5 drivers, they've all pulled well clear to the tune of 7 seconds of the next group of cars headed by Job Stewart. And there he is on screen at the moment, just ahead of Jordan Ross, Damien Johnston and Matthew Boland. Damien Johnston was one of the drivers who came into tonight a bit vulnerable in terms of the point situation. He was 18th in the standings coming into this evening, but with positions as they are at the moment, he and Job Stewart are both looking pretty comfortable in terms of qualifying for that top 20. So Damien Johnston's position stand at the moment, he's actually on target to come 14th in the qualifying series, which would be a gain of four spots from where he came into the round.
Keep an eye on that, the live points on the right-hand side of the screen. You can see now Brady Baldwin 19th, Connor Nixon 20th, Andrew Youssef now in 21st, and those things they've been swapping positions over the last few laps. Obviously, everything starts to change with pit stops, but man, it all comes down to these last few laps. 14 laps or 13 laps to go now as we cross the start-finish line, and it's like the pressure really starts to build. You know you're so close and being on that bubble. I don't know that I have too many nails left at the end of it. Jake, would you want to know? Would you want to know if you're in that position?
I think late in this race, you need to know. As I said at the start, you don't want to be thinking about it too early. You know, you just want to be able to run your race. But if you're in a position where passing one car makes the difference, you'd want to know about it because you don't want to just sit behind them and then find out afterwards. I think this is the point in the race where you tell your spotter needs to tell you, okay, if there's a chance of you making something in this race and one position will count, you need to know so that you can make it work.
One of the complications, though, is that Connor Nixon did not serve that 10-second penalty in that pit stop. So that penalty is going to have to be added onto his time at the end of the race now because there's no pit stops left. And that's just going to add some extra complexity to this. So it could actually mean that we don't fully understand the top 20 until well after the race once we impose those post-race penalties. So we might need to get the calculator and the Excel spreadsheets out and try and work it out for ourselves. And Forzen El Nabi, he was waving left to right, and is he going to come into the pits? Yes. And Phil Sell mirrors him. So our race leaders both coming in on this occasion. Oh, big lock-up for Forzen El Nabi.
Yeah, you touched on that before, Jake, that you noticed one of the drivers just aggressive on the pit lane, and it looks like he's going to get a black flag for that. So he got caught out, just coming in a little bit too hot, the pit lane. We've just been told that he's got a black flag for it.
So will that be extra time that he now has to sit in pit lane? Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be a fairly heavy penalty as well. If I remember correctly, I think it's about 40 seconds. I think it's pretty severe. So that'll take him well out of contention of the race. He should be safe in terms of the championship. He should still be well in the top 20. But, yeah, disaster.
Yeah.
So Phil Sell drives on out. Oh, and Job Stewart's been penalised as well, we're hearing.
He was the one who was close the first time. And Sandman pointed out before that I'd pointed out someone. It was actually him. So he's taken a big bite the first time and got away with it, but this time he's gone a little too far, and that may actually be important for Job because he was close. So he's now 19.
Oh, look at the point. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so the pressure just ratchets up a little bit.
Remember I said earlier in the race that they're the little mistakes that are in your hands that you don't want to do because they're the easy ones. I mean, you know, obviously everyone's going to be aggressive on pit entry and, you know, you don't want to tag someone and get just silly little penalties because that can just absolutely ruin your night. And now you see, look at that, the way the points are. Job is 20th now. So it's, yeah, that has cost him big time where he looked safe and sound, but that penalty now has just changed everything big time.
Has it ever? So he's now on the bubble and only 6 points ahead of Andre Youssef. Now, I do think with the penalty that's going to come the way of Connor Nixon, that's going to drop him back to probably, what, 17th? Oh, gee, it's going to be close. It's going to be real close.
We see Jared on the green too. He's now belting down the pit lane, down the front straight now. See the team's just coming out of the pit lane now, so he's going to grab the lead. It's going to be very close on exit, but a nice little job there for Jared. Oh, a little bit wide there for Maloney.
And Griffin Gardner up the inside and gets the job done. Only just. They were side by side exiting turn number 1, that big steep downhill run out of the first corner. But Griffin Gardner had the track position and was able to keep himself ahead of Jake Maloney, and you can see Bo Albert sitting back there in 4th position. This is still on between these two. Maloney's been pretty quick tonight, and he'll be keen to try and get that spot back.
Always tricky when you dart out of the pit lane. Obviously, you got, you know, cold tyres, you're going into that hard right-hander, and then you got the pressure of everyone else coming around you there at speed too. So it's easily done when you just run it a little bit deep, and you haven't quite got the grip that you expect. But thankfully, it hasn't cost him too much, and now Jake can just push on and tag onto the back of Griffin and still play this race out over the next 11 laps.
So those stop-go penalties were very costly. So just to give you an idea, we know that Forza El Nabi was the race leader as he came into the pits. That penalty has dropped him all the way down to 18th position, with everybody now having completed their second pit stops. And Job Stewart, who was comfortably in the top 10, now sits in 21st position in the race. Now that those second pit stops are complete, we do have a bit of a corrected points tally. So Job Stewart, 19th, just 2 points ahead of Connor Nixon, who is another 6 points ahead of Andre Youssef. But I still reckon that penalty that is going to come the way of Connor Nixon probably drop him. He's 13th at the moment. There are, what have we got? 3 cars that are within 10 seconds of him at the moment. So that probably puts him back to 16th. And I think that will probably be an advantage Andre Youssef, because there's an 8-point difference. And I think those 3 positions that he's going to lose will probably cost him more than 8 points. But the other complexity in all of this is that you've now got some fast drivers like Forza El Nabi and Job Stewart, who are going to be on the comeback trail after those penalties. They're going to make up spots. They're going to change the order of this race, and they could potentially get in between Connor Nixon and Andre Youssef. So that's the other thing that is potentially going to pollute the point situation here.
It's incredible you touching on all that information that we may not know coming into the last lap who's safe and who's not. Like, that's how close it is for some of these people. So, and still don't rule out, any altercations between some drivers. If it starts to get a little bit racy between someone locks a brake and tags the back of someone else, that could be a penalty. So there's still so much that can play out, and you've just got to be mindful of the things you can control. Obviously the pit lane speeding penalty, that's something that's sort of in your control. It's easy to do, but it's those little 1%ers that you just really got to make sure that you try not to make those mistakes. Unfortunately, it's caught a couple of people out, but you don't want to do anything else silly as we got 9 laps to go.
Probably the other point that I should make as well, we haven't seen an appearance from the Logitech G Aston Martin GT4 safety car tonight, but if the safety car was to come out due to a late incident to bunch the field up, that obviously compounds the impact of a time penalty, because it bunches everybody up, and it means that the number of positions that you lose with that penalty is going to be much higher than if the field is spread out. So the thing that Connor Nixon absolutely does not want, cannot afford at the moment, is for there to be a safety car.
And that's why I would be in his ear to have that penalty served under race conditions, because like you said, a late race caution and your race is cooked. And when you're trying to hold on to the bubble, I think it's important that you get that penalty. You're going to serve it anyway. Serve it on the track. Then you know that if there does happen to be a safety car, it can actually work in your favour, where you could leapfrog a few cars if the field's all bunched up.
The battles are continuing. We're looking at the battle for 6th at the moment. Zach Rattray White, Matthew Boland, Jacob O'Reilly, Damien Johnston and Josh Thomas. A lot of those drivers, pretty much all of them in qualification for the top 20. Damien Johnston, as I said, was looking a bit vulnerable coming into tonight, but he's been able to stitch together a pretty strong race and avoided some of the dramas that have affected others, like the penalties. That was an aggressive move there from O'Reilly, but he gets the job done.
It's impressive, wasn't it? When I saw him pull out as quick as he did, I thought, sometimes these cars have got the nature of, you start a little bit of a tank slapper going on. But thankfully he was able to pull it up, got the job done. But man, it caught us by surprise.
I do like the livery on those Vermilion Motorsports Commodores as well. Jacob O'Reilly and Zach Rattray White really stand out on track with that fluoro signage on the black base colour.
Something else I was just thinking with regards to Connor Nixon, we actually had, if I remember correctly, a instance in the main series last year where I think it was actually Jared. I could be wrong, I'll happily be corrected, but we actually had an instance where an in-race penalty was given, and Jared didn't serve it in the race and then appealed it and got it revoked. So that is an avenue that can be taken within the rules. So that's maybe on Connor Nixon's mind of, hey, I'm not going to take my penalty in the race. I'm going to try my shot at getting it revoked in the appeals process after the race. You may as well have a crack at it if it's the difference that you're being in the series or not. It's certainly an avenue I'd take.
Well, you've kind of got nothing to lose, do you? So what I will say, though, is it would have been nice for us to have the top 20 finalised tonight rather than it being finalised in the steward's office at an appeals tribunal, but I suppose that will potentially keep the conversation going into the next week if that's the path that we go down.
Nothing better than politics in motorsport, is there, Lockie?
So scrolling across the bottom of the screen at the moment is the calendar for the Logitech G Pro Invitational E-Series. For those of you who've just joined us, I did go through it at the top of the broadcast, but it all kicks off at Sebring in the US on the 13th of March. And we do have 3 endurance events on the calendar this year, in addition to the traditional Sandown 500 and Bathurst 1000. We will open the season of endurance with a 500k race at Brazil's Interlagos circuit, famous for drivers like Ayrton Senna starring in Formula 1, but it's going to play host to the first twin driver endurance event of the season this year in the Logitech G Pro Invitational A-Series.
Are you breathing a sigh of relief, Jake, that we see that rain is coming to iRacing in the next build? Unfortunately, it's not the V8's turn this time round, but it wouldn't be too far away. But is that something that's playing on your mind, knowing that you're going to have to take weather into consideration soon?
Yeah, definitely. I'm really excited for it. I hope that we see rain on the Supercar sooner rather than later. I think it's one of the best elements of real life racing. I think you see some real talent show from some drivers who perhaps don't have the best car or the best setup on the day. It's a real leveler, as they say. So it's going to be really exciting. I'd love to see nothing more than sort of a rain come down with 10 laps to go at Bathurst. I think that'd be awesome.
I think we'd like that from the commentary box too, wouldn't we, Lockie? Because we don't have to steer those things in the wet.
Well, it adds a whole extra dimension, doesn't it? If you can have variable weather conditions, then that adds another strategic element to the racing as well. So bring it on, I say. Now, this, I believe, is Job Stewart on the comeback trail. So he's sitting in 20th position at the moment. It doesn't need to take any unnecessary risks here because he is sitting in 19th position in our live championship standings. So provided he holds down that position or maybe gains 1 or 2 more spots just to be on the safe side in case his rivals were to pick up any spots in the closing laps, he should be okay as far as qualification for the main series is concerned. He's on the tail of Luke Mitchinson at the moment.
He's definitely applying the pressure, but geez, you'd be gutted if he got himself a penalty where they made contact here. Obviously, he's being smart about it. He's given himself plenty of room here, but he's cautiously aggressive, I think, at the moment. Or he has a bit of a look towards the inside, not quite there, but still got a few more laps to go. He's in a good position, doesn't need to do anything silly, and I think he's quite content at the moment just to sort of sit there and see how it all plays out over the next few laps.
So we are inside the final 5 laps. Jared Filsell leading the race by half a second over Griffin Gardner as we see Job Stewart taking advantage of that slipstream, pulling to the inside and executing a nice textbook manoeuvre on Luke Mitchinson. Moving himself there up into 19th spot, Job Stewart.
Well, yet again, Jared's had another reasonably cruisy night. He hasn't led every lap, but it's been quite comfortable for him. I think he's just been in control. He's always been there or thereabouts tonight. And he looks in his mirror and he can see that it looks like Griffin Gardner is thinking about a move on Jake. But then right there is Bo Albert too. So these three that'll start mixing it up with each other. That takes the pressure off Jared. You know, obviously he doesn't have to win tonight, but it's always fun when you can chalk up another win and go for the clean sweep in the qualifying series. But he'll be happy when he starts looking in his rearview mirror and sees the people behind him starting to battle it out a little bit.
Now, one of the interesting things here, and I know that it's not super critical, but if we look at the top of the standings in the qualifying series, we know that Jared Filsell is comfortably going to win it, as we see Bo Albert getting down the inside of Griffin Gardner, but runs wide on the exit, allowing Gardner to do the switchback. But Bo Albert will have the inside for the next right-hander, and this side-by-side battle between these two will continue. This is for the final spot on the podium. Albert to the inside. Gardner trying to switch back. What a great battle this is between these two in the closing laps. Gardner trying to get back down the inside. They'll run side by side. It's still not resolved yet between these two. And I think, yes, Bo Albert finally manages to complete the move, but he'll have to defend here because Gardner will be looking for the switchback and the good exit out of the final corner. What a great demonstration of clean, hard but fair racing between those two.
That was brilliant. And look at the gap that they've lost now to Maloney that was in front of them. So just them battling as hard as they were, they gave each other so much room, really good sportsmanship. It's still not over now. It's a drag race with the draft now. Side by side as they go. Oh, a little bit of side by side action there. Just a bit of a door handle to door handle kiss just to let each other know that they're having a right. He's gone out deep. He's going to run wide. So Gardner now just went in a little bit deep and now he's given all that ground. Wow, well, these guys just mucking around. That was really good into the braking zone, but man, just lost a little bit of space there to Bo Albert now for Griffin Gardner.
He had a big head of steam heading into turn one because he had the slipstream of Bo Albert, who defended to the inside. Gardner pulled to the outside, but he was probably carrying a bit more speed than perhaps he was expecting on the run into turn one, which meant that he would have had to brake a bit earlier. And as a result, if he braked at his normal braking marker, it would have been too late. And as a result, he's fired off at turn number one. Now, back to the comment that I was making about the top of the standings. So Forzen El Navi came into this round second. He is going to drop a couple of spots as a result of being buried back in the mid-pack with that penalty. That is going to move Jordan Ross up to second position in this qualifying series ahead of Bo Albert. So that is going to prove quite costly for Forzen El Navi. I mean, he's still going to be absolutely safe in terms of qualifying for the main series, but a series is a series, and you would have liked to have been in the top three, and that penalty for El Navi is going to cost him, by the looks of it, a top three spot within this series. Also, we're hearing, so Connor Nixon currently sits in position number 13. Now, the key thing here is that if he loses 3 spots, he's got a 12-point advantage over Andre Youssef. He can afford to lose 3 spots, and he'd still be just ahead of Youssef. However, the wild card factor in this is Forzen El Navi, because El Navi is in 17th at the moment, 4 spots behind Connor Nixon. At the moment, Forzen El Navi is about 12 seconds away from Connor Nixon. If he can make up another couple of seconds in this last couple of laps, he will get within 10 seconds of Connor Nixon, which means that Nixon will lose an extra position, which means that he'll miss out. So the fate of Connor Nixon hangs in the balance in this last couple of laps. Extraordinary.
A good little battle up here for first too between Jared and Jake. These guys aren't mucking around. As we start to approach with 1 lap to go almost, they're really having a red hot go, but man, I mean, eyes will be glued to the live standings just to see if that changes. And of course, Forzen, if he hadn't have got that penalty, it would have been written and it would have been done. The points would be as they were, but this is still on. Forzen still needs to make up a little bit of time, and then that 10-second penalty comes into play, but it's hold your breath stuff as we go into the final lap here at Fuji.
What a performance from Jake Maloney as well. I mean, he's always been a consistent runner within the Supercars A Series fraternity, but hey, this race tonight, he has been right up on the tail of Jared Filsell for pretty much the entire race distance, going blow for blow with him, and this will give Jake Maloney a lot of confidence heading into the main series. There's no doubt about that.
Oh, just seeing what he's got here. He'll put the pressure on Filsell. He's going to try around the outside, then a crossover. Jared's just been smart. Oh, on the then you can see him getting on the throttle, a little bit of wheel spin. But man, these guys are leaving nothing on the table. They know they're coming in this half lap. There's nothing for them to lose here. They know they're in the series for 2024, but they're just going to have a red hot go. Jake really wants to put the pressure on Jared. He's going to take a dive up the inside. Is he going to get the job done? Jared's almost done the clean sweep side by side. A little bit of contact between these two. A hip and shoulder back again, and Jake's now on the dirty side of the racetrack.
He had to get his elbows out there to defend Jared Filsell. He's gone in deep to the penultimate corner. Here comes Jake Maloney looking for the switchback. Filsell checks it up, but Maloney's got the nose up the inside. He's got to the leader. Here comes Bo Albert. They are going to be 3 wide, just about heading down to the start-finish line. Maloney waving left, waving right on the run down to the finish line. Who gets there first? The answer to that question is it will be Jake Maloney, who with a dramatic last corner passing manoeuvre denies Filsell a clean sweep of the qualifying series. Filsell home in second and Bo Albert through for third spot. The top 3 cars separated by less than 0.3 of a second, but it's not done yet. We've got a championship qualification position in the balance here, and it all hinges on position number 13 and the gap between that position and position 17. Is it more or less than 10 seconds? That's what it comes down to. Connor Nixon has crossed the line in position 13. Is he 10 seconds ahead of Force Nel Nabi? And the answer to that question is yes. Connor Nixon gets himself in by the skin of his teeth, even with that 10-second penalty. It'll push him back to 16th, but that should still be good enough provisionally. Get him in by a couple of points over Andre Youssef into the top 20 and the all-important qualification position for the main game. Wow, what a finish. That escalated quickly, but Jake Maloney saved his best till last and gets the win. Pinches it from Filsell in the dying stages.
You touched on it, Lockie. You said it'd be good for Jake. You know, it's a good run when he's having such a strong run in this series, getting him ready for 2024, knowing that he took it right up to Jared and then got the job done, denied him of that clean sweep, exactly like he said. He'd be absolutely stoked with this result, and yeah, that gives him good momentum going into the series for 2024.
I mean, we talk a lot about the likes of Madison Down and Brady Myers and Jake Burton as title contenders for the Trans-Tasman team, but Jake Maloney, do not count him out. You can bet that he's going to be a serious player in season 2024. Down.
An incredible qualifying series as we check out the results. After 45 laps, Jake Maloney in an epic finish between him and Jared Filsell. And then have a look at Bo Albert. How close was he right at the end of it in the dying stages? Unbelievable. A sensational race. And for it to come down to the wire like that between the top 2 and then to have us biting our nails for the bubble, it's been an incredible race.
It sure has. But some excellent overtaking there. The move from Maloney on Filsell on the last lap. The lap before that, we saw Bo Albert setting up and putting a brilliant switchback manoeuvre on Griffin Gardner. That was a battle that went on for a couple of corners and was ultimately resolved in favour of Bo Albert for the final spot on the podium. We're hearing that when we get to the live standings that we might actually have a couple of drivers tied on points for 20th, so we'll have to go back and do that countback situation that we talked about earlier. Let's have a look at your championship standings. Jared Filsell by 110 points over Jordan Ross Bo Albert moving up into the top 3 in the standings with his fine performance tonight. Forza El Nabi with that penalty drops from 2nd to 4th. Jake Maloney came into the night 7th but moves up to 5th by virtue of that victory. And then it's Jacob O'Reilly, Sean McNamara, Matthew Boland, Zach Rattray White and Griffin Gardner rounding out your top 10. This is where it gets interesting. These are the drivers who will qualify for your Pro Invitational A Series. Josh Thomas, Richard Hampstead, Teo Sereno, Ian Ford, Damien Johnston, Hayden Veld, Kurt Stenborg, Brady Baldwin and Job Stewart. We know that those drivers are all safely in, but Andre Youssef and Connor Nixon, we believe, provisionally are tied on points, 448 points apiece. We have to go to an outback situation to break the tie between those two drivers. Brian Borg missing out. Also, Scott Gamble, who didn't race tonight, meant that he didn't earn enough points to qualify for the top 20. Michael Whiting, Tyson Broad, Daniel Hall missing out as well. Michael Talliansich outside the top 20 on points, but gets himself a spot in the A-Series as a result of the wildcard entry for winning the V8 Veterans Championship. Luke Mitchinson, Brody Sentence, Channel Lewis rounding out your top 30 on at the points table. Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, so they're saying that he's made contact with Phil Sell in the last corner. So that is going to drop him back off the podium. We'll have to go back to our live timing again. So that, by my calculations, that'll actually elevate Griffin Gardner to 3rd. So it'll be Jared Phil Sell taking the win ahead of Bo Albert, and then Griffin Gardner will be 3rd. And speaking of our podium finishers, we've got them now. We'll start off with our 3rd place finisher tonight, Griffin Gardner, coming home in position number 3 and also comfortably securing himself a spot in at the Logitech G Pro Invitational E-Series. Griffin, good race tonight, mate, and especially a great battle with Bo Albert in those closing laps.
Yeah, it was running a good race. Was looking good in the last stint, but it was just a setup. We were on a lot lower wing than everyone else, so pretty much a sitting duck in the middle sector until the straightaway. So it was pretty just went the wrong direction tonight.
In saying that, though, your performances throughout this series must give you plenty of confidence heading into the main game.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think anywhere between 5 and 10 in the championship is definitely there to get. So put a lot of effort into this season. Hopefully we go well.
Anybody you'd like to thank who gets it done for you off the track?
Just Sean and the whole team at 9.5 for everything they do, and to our sponsors as well at Racecraft, Tony and Race Apparel, RSW Graphics, Racing Years, Prestige Cinematography, and you guys, what you guys do with the broadcast as well.
Thank you, Griffin, and congratulations on a fantastic night and a fantastic season. Move on to our 2nd place finisher tonight. He's been one of the big improvers of the qualifying series. Finishes a season best 2nd tonight, secures a top 3 spot in the series standings. It's my fellow Ballarat local, Bo Albert. Congratulations, Bo.
Yeah, cheers, Lockie. That went a lot better than I could have ever expected. Not bad for someone who doesn't drive the V8 day in, day out.
Talk us through your night. Obviously, you qualified strongly, and then in the race, you were there or thereabouts as well. But the highlight was obviously that terrific battle with Griffin Gardner in the last couple of laps.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, qualifying just sets off your night totally. So if you get qualifying wrong, as I've done twice this season, it's a tough night. If you get it right, you know you're in for a pretty good night as well. So it's just so dependent on qualifying, which is frustrating. But it was pretty cool to hook that up tonight and get P2 on the grid, first front row ever in a grid of this caliber in a supercar, so that's very cool. But yeah, that fight with Griffin was very, very cool. I did notice a little bit when I was following him in the 2nd stint of the race that he did seem to lose his rear tyres or just lost front tyres or something. Just the grip wasn't quite there towards the end of the stint. So coming into that final run, I knew I had to use that to my advantage. I sort of had a feeling Maloney and Phil Sell were going to check out just a little bit ahead of me. So I thought P3 was the best we could possibly go for. And yeah, I just had to give it a crack. It's always fun racing Griff, very respectful. I think we both knew there wasn't, there wasn't any point risking such a good result at the end of the race. But yeah, fun to get the elbows out a little bit.
I've got Sandman and Jake in the commentary box as well. Any questions for Bo, gents?
More just a congratulations, mate. Your pace, it hasn't been a fluke for just tonight. You've had the speed throughout the series and earned yourself a ticket. I mean, it's been really good to see your pace of late, and to get a P2 tonight, that's the icing on the cake, surely.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I said, the Supercar is not a car I've really dedicated, a lot of time to in the past. It's not to say I'm inexperienced in it, because I still have something like 15 starts in another major Premier Series in this car, but over the years, it averages out to maybe 2 or 3 starts a year. So for my experience, I didn't know what to expect coming into this series. It's obviously a very new challenge for me. So to walk away with 2 podiums now is unreal. And of course, it's a shame to see the penalty from Maloney. I haven't looked at the incident, so I don't know whether that's a fair call or not. But yeah, regardless, I wasn't involved in the incident, so I can only take the result. And yeah, second place is one I'll be celebrating tonight.
Good stuff, mate. I don't know if Jake's still with us, if he wants to say anything, but yeah, congratulations, mate. I'll hand it over to Jake, see if he's got anything to say.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, mate. I listened to you on Mez's podcast the other day, and you spoke a lot about how you're sort of planning out to take this as sort of a 1 or 2 year kind of experiment and see how you go. So with that in mind, obviously tonight you finished a 1/10 of a second behind a champion in Jared Filsell. So where do you sort of set your expectations for this year now that you're in the series proper?
Yeah, well, of course, going into the main series, I know the competition level only ramps up, competing with the likes of Madison Down, yourself, and a whole host of other drivers who are at the very pinnacle of Australian sim racing in this car. So, look, second place tonight is great, but I think it's important to, not pad myself up too much and just realise that, yes, it's a great result, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of work come round 1 at Sebring. So I think realistically, all tonight proves is I deserve a spot in the Pro Series, and that's about it. That's all it proves to me. I deserve to be one of those 40 cars on the grid. Where I deserve to be on the grid, quote unquote, so to say, is, that remains to be seen.
Well, that's it, mate. Congratulations, and anyone you'd like to thank before we let you go?
Yeah, well, just I'll make a little bit of a somber note to end it off. I want to dedicate tonight's result to my grandpa, who sadly passed away 2 days ago. I know me and him weren't particularly close, but regardless, it's a big hit to the family. And yeah, I just hope that the rest of the family's doing okay, and hopefully, I know it's only a virtual sim race, so in the grand scheme of things, it's it doesn't matter too much. But hopefully, a smile can be brought to a couple of family members in what is a very tough time.
Well, our condolences, mate. Well, congratulations, and I look forward to racing you next year. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, guys. See you in round 1 at Sebring.
There we go. Bo Albert finishing in second place tonight, and our winner this evening completing a clean sweep of the qualifying series and comfortably earning himself a spot on the grid for the main game. Well done, Jared Filsell. Jared, you had to work for it tonight, but you successfully completed 4 from 4.
Yeah, I had to work for that one. Thank you. Yeah, tyres just fell off towards the end there. Untested on low fuel and worn tyres, so yeah, it was a bit of an unknown coming into tonight. So yeah.
Talk us through the battle that you had with Jake Maloney in that last lap, which ultimately, obviously, resulted in Jake copping a penalty.
Yeah, I was expecting a bomb at the last corner, to be fair. I just tried to hold him on the outside, but I just outbroke myself a little bit. And then yeah, he just got into my bar and pushed me through the corner, and then I had no exit. Yeah, pretty straightforward in my opinion. But it is. Yeah, I saw he was making moves in the last corner.
When we look at the qualifying series as a whole, having won all 4 of the races, how much confidence does that give you now to go back to the main series and try and repeat your success of a couple of years ago?
Yeah, obviously the top end of this field is still quite stacked. It's just going to probably be double that. Go real racing for the main stuff, so it's just going to be another 10 cars deal with, so it's going to be pressures on. Going to have to execute, no mistakes, and where we end up.
I've got Sandman and Jake in the commentary box as well. Gents, any questions for Jared?
Jared, it was right down to the wire there. A little bit of pressure. It was some tough racing there. Did you think that? Obviously it got close towards the end. Did you think you're in a chance of, well, I guess missing out on the clean sweep? It didn't really matter at the end because at the end of the day, you did enough throughout the series to get the job done. So it was pretty cruisily regardless. But it was a good little battle. It's just a shame that it came to blows there.
Yeah, obviously I would have rather crossed the line first, but yeah, should rectified that. But no, it was cool. I'd rather have a battle than just be bored out front. So no, it's I don't mind having a battle every now and then.
And coming to a racetrack that we don't, I guess, really know a lot about for a supercar around Fuji, what were your thoughts coming into tonight? Did you enjoy that aspect?
I don't mind the track itself, to be fair. The car was just a little bit difficult to set up. It wasn't. I was on the fence whether to go for the high downforce package or the unbolt the rear wing and send it, but we went with the rear wing off option. Hence the tyre life dramas at the end there. So yeah, something to look forward to. See if we can learn anything from that. The track really pulled down. I didn't expect it to pull down that much. A lot of rear grip there for whatever reason. Yeah.
And we're only a few weeks away from the opening round of the 2024 season. I guess you're ready to go now. It's been a good warm-up for you. A few race wins under your belt, and you got the new green machine looking speedy. So I reckon you'd be pretty excited for round one.
Yeah, definitely. To rectify some issues that I had there last year. Unfortunately, that was a shocker. So yeah, keep clean and press on with round one at Sebring. It's always fun, that track. Super competitive as it was last year, but probably up another 20 notches, I'm sure.
Before we let you go, is there anyone you want to thank, Jared?
Yeah, obviously Speed Cafe for jumping on board. It's like I said, it's a green machine. I like to call it a green eyed monster. Quite a nice vehicle. The other guys will have a different colour variant in round one, so you've only seen the green eyed monster. So yeah, there'll be another variant coming out in round one. So yeah, and as well as Ryko Performance as well. You can have our setups on there if you want to see how you can compare yourself to us. Great to get setups off those guys. If you want to go oval racing or road racing, it's great.
Well done, mate. Congratulations. Looking forward to talk throughout the year as the season kicks off. All the best. Well done tonight, and we'll talk to you in a few weeks' time.
Thanks, mate.
There he is. Thank you, our race winner. So let's just have a look at this replay. So there's a couple of paths to this. So the initial lunge is coming into turn number 13. So at this point, they're side by side. Maloney down the inside. A little bit of hip and shoulder. That's okay there. Fuel Cell has the advantage for the next left-hander at turn number 14. But where it starts to get interesting is when they head up towards this last corner here. So it's that contact there where Maloney gets into the rear bumper of Jared Fuel Cell and he loses momentum coming out of the last corner. That's a bump and run. That's not allowed. That's the reason that Jake Maloney has a 5-second penalty. And I think that's fair enough because you can't gain an advantage like that by running into the rear of another car. All right, so that wraps up all of the action from the Supercars Pro Invitational Qualifying Series. The top 20 yet to be officially confirmed, and we'll be doing that for you on social media and on the website in the coming days. But the top 20 from this series will all be added to the 20 who already qualified by virtue of their championship finishing position from last year's series, and that will give us our 40-car grid for the 2024 edition of the Logitech G Pro Invitational A Series. It all kicks off on Wednesday the 13th of March with the first round happening at Sebring, and you can catch all of the action live right here on SimSpeed TV. My thank you to Steve Sandman Clark, Jake Burton, and behind the scenes, Jay Kennedy on production. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Lockie Mansell. See you next time. Bye for now.
Baba, what are we playing?
Ya lo sabéis, it's Halo Day.
Yeah, one sec.
He's playing football, isn't he?
Chacho, you know he fancies himself a footballer.
Oh, whatever. Look, your love makes me strong, but your hate makes me invincible. All right, let's get on Halo then.
Let's go.
Ready.
Dale.
He's on my back this time, right?
Chill, chaval. I won't ghost you this time.
I'm going hallway.
I got right.
Uno fuera.
Oh, another one down. Lock in. Next kill wins it.
Where is he? No lo veo.
Alicia, do you hear that?
Quick on him, top left.
Bet. I'll push it. He's one shot.
Game over.
Got him.
Well played.
Same time tomorrow then.
We'll see.
Bye-bye.
Ciao. Nos vemos.